And hello everyone, Justin with Deep Dive Stocks here, and today we're going to be doing another market dive, this time for August 28th, it's a Thursday. And I have for our viewing standard LDPM, just the default settings, but with 567 toggled on, which is the 144, 377, and the 610. And again, I kind of like those. They give those nice broad overviews, the general trends. It's usually what I'm just looking for. And then we have LDPS is on balanced. So it's trying to strike a balance between being, up to date with current trend changes, without being too conservative on what it considers to be a significant shift in liquidity. So it's trying to strike that balance. So we got LDPM, LDPS, and also let's put on liquidity levels. Okie dokie. And so let's see. All right, so we're going. We had that after hours. So right away, it looks like the pre-market opens and we move right to the resistance. And curiously though, it switches to bullish, right? So as it kind of rejects, it switches to bullish, which actually just means that we're probably going to go right back up. And then we did again, even though we rejected, we're still bullish. So we're just going to go right back up, which we did. And now we cross over. We go right to LDPM 5, crossover again. So this is pretty bullish. Even though, again, here, when the price dips, it's still bullish. So you're going to just kind of bounce back up. Oh, and is that it for the day? So the day is the day did end on this bullish liquidity. We've seen this pattern before, though, where it is bullish, but it is sort of resting along these supports. But bullish is as bullish does. We do have this nice bullish liquidity levels and amounts, so they're positive values. So as long as these remain green, these candles, we should expect movement back in another attempt at LDPM L6. But as it's riding this support here, we're going to just kind of want to keep an eye out that the liquidity doesn't start to turn bearish, which would kind of undo all of this bullish work that's been done. But for now, NVIDIA post-earnings seems relatively bullish, relatively stabilized. But we're just gonna have to watch as that price, uses that bullish support, that LDPM L7. Is it siphoning that support to just kind of stay where it's at, which isn't a good thing, or is it actually going to be able to bounce up to the LDPM L6? So that's how I would be. I don't know. I think if I were in a position, if I had gone long as things switched, I think now I'd probably start sizing out, just because again, you like those very distinct like moves up. But okay, enough rambling about that. Bullish is as bullish does, so things are green. So we should ultimately, at the end of the day, expect a test of LDPM L6, unless liquidity conditions start becoming bearish. And then we should expect movement down to LDPM L5 for support at like 178.60. But we'll keep an eye on that. I think the daily for NVIDIA is relatively interesting. Definitely bearish liquidity. And so on the daily, so if we zoom all the way out from just looking in at like what might happen in the next day or two, and we switch up to the daily interval, which is going to tell us more so what's going to happen over the next weeks, even months, we see that the expected outcome is actually still a test of this support at LDPM L5, as the LDPS has been painting the candles red for bearish. So, and this does sort of paint the overall picture that we get from the 15-minute, where we see that bullish liquidity is sort of struggling to get spot up, because it's really just keeping spot at the level of that LDPM support that we saw. And we can see that the bigger picture, when we zoom out, it may be because, as we zoom out, instead of just looking at, the weather over a particular city, we start looking at the weather over the whole state. We start noticing that the clouds are forming still. And so support along LDPM L5 is likely incoming, which is currently sat at 160, which is how much? How much would that be from here? 10%, 11%-ish. Not bad. And do you guys ever notice? I'm pretty sure this is a cool TradingView thing. But I think TradingView knows sort of like, I feel like it figures out where some sort of like line is being drawn. I always noticed that over the past like year or so, if you click this, it actually does a pretty good job of finding either the next candle, so like auto sizes, or it auto moves to like if it notices that there's like a line drawn on the chart. But it's neither here nor there. But if that's true TradingView, good job. It's actually pretty good. So let's move over to Bitcoin. We have current conditions on Bitcoin are bearish. Let's see, when did we last see? We'll start from the 28th, I guess, midnight. So we have that bearish liquidity. We are testing, I'll put it on 3 so we can talk along. Oh, we do need liquidity levels. So we are bearish precedents, right? So the negative amounts, negative flow rates, so things are becoming are flowing bearish, they're overall bearish. We get a switch. We have this bearish test support with a bullish, or test the resistance, and then things turn bullish, and we switch bullish, price stagnates. We get the little flashes of bullish or bearish liquidity. I can't stand that they both those words start with B. It slowly degrades to that bearish, and we test the support, which is where we find current conditions. And this is Bitcoin on the 15. And so as long as those bearish conditions remain, we should expect movement past below LDPML6. And then again, if they continue, movement to LDPML7. When we incorporate the liquidity levels, we see that it sort of, as long as the precedents, as long as the amount, the things that have been occurring in the liquidity environment are positive, it does sort of delay the expectation of moving through. And so we kind of just want to watch this to see if, as that support is providing, the support that the liquidity, the bullish liquidity that's kind of been, adding up into the bank account doesn't become negative, right? So we would ideally like this support to instill some bullish liquidity, spot starts moving up, and then start seeing the bullish or the liquidity tanks starting to be refilled with bullish liquidity. But right now, currently, we have the liquidity tanks are trending down. So moving the support is draining that bullish liquidity. And then along with LDPS painting the candles red, this does suggest that this support here at LDPML6 or 111,816 is going to ultimately fail. And so now it's just going to be a waiting game and seeing if that occurs, if this sort of process that's underway just sort of continues, which it looks like it's on its way to doing. So this is a pretty bearish print from Bitcoin on the 15. We're already testing the supports here at LDPML6 at 111,000. And we can see that the tank is being drained of its bullish liquidity. And so we definitely, it looks like a movement through that support at LDPML6 is likely. And then that will ultimately give us the outlook of moving down to 110,000 on Bitcoin. So that's Bitcoin. Cool. ES futures. I heard something about all-time highs today, so let's check it out. This is indeed looking all-time high-ish. So if we do go from yesterday, so we had that bearish surge at the end of market. We move back to the support, turn bullish, get caught, it seems, kind of just between that resistance and the support. Ultimately, looks like we do get some bullish flows, but it's pretty messy. It's pretty choppy, right? Like we see that we keep needing to test that support here. One single candle moving down to that support again, we rise to resistance, but we don't really get over it, but then we fall to the support, but we don't really break through it, and then finally it looks like we get a bullish surge to move us over the resistance at LDPML7. But this is very reminiscent to what we saw last week, where we have this surge of bullish liquidity. What is the liquidity levels? But now price is stagnating. We do have bullish precedents, so this suggests that as these LDPM levels rise, we're likely going to meet it. And then as long as things remain bullish, we should bounce off that support and continue upwards. But with the stagnating price, it does seem like we're probably going to need a little bit of support. But when we test that support, we shouldn't move through it because we have, as long as LDPS is remaining bullish, and as long as the liquidity flows, they actually look pretty healthy in that bullish sense. So as long as those conditions remain, then the expectation is that if we tap that support, just like here, we should bounce up. the name of the game though is that eventually we should, kind of keep going. But as long as if we need that support, the market needs it, the market gets it, I guess. So, but bullish on ES futures. Tentatively bullish, right? Like it's that bullish that people don't really like where you say bullish, but then it's like, okay, but we might actually need to test that support. We might actually need to get a little re-up on that bullish flow. And people go, wow, but then the price is going to go down. How is it bullish? But all right, well, yeah, give it a minute. The market lives much longer than us. It has a much different, the flow of time works differently through the market. So, let it cook. So that's futures, right? So tentatively bullish. We have that nice bullish flows, bullish liquidity, but we might need this support. We might need a little bounce off the support before we get to see a next leg up. Bitcoin looks wholly bearish at present. We're testing that support, but we have that bearish liquidity. We see the liquidity levels are draining. So this is much more of a bearish outlook than we see on futures. Nvidia is Nvidia. I'm honestly, this is probably the last time we checked in on it, except for the daily, because I really do expect this sort of to like start needing to test those supports here soon as that bearish liquidity mounts. So, all right, last thing, let's check out Ethereum. Let's do same shtick. We'll do right as it turns bullish, which is like what, the start of, almost at the start of the day. So we're bearish, bearish, bearish. We hit that support and we actually bounce up, which is cool. So that support held. And then as we bounce, we get bullish. So we know the next stop is going to be that resistance up. We cross over LDPM L5 with that bullish liquidity still. So we know as we bounce, we're going to bounce up to that next resistance, which at that time was LDPM L7 right now. We do test it, we fail, but we maintain that bullish liquidity. And then it seems then on the next test, we move distinctly upwards. Similar to how we saw on this, where we move up, was it? Yeah. On the futures, where we move up, but we might need a little bit of a test. It comes down, what's that, around 6 in the morning, taps the support, and then bounces back up. It kind of keeps going, keeps testing that support, and then that's what it's what you don't want to see if you're long as we're testing that support. So if we go back here, we'll do it slow-mo. So we're like, okay, we're testing the support, but we're bullish, so we should bounce and then continue along our merry way, right? And then we go, actually, I think I can go forward one frame at a time. So bullish, bullish, and then as soon as we see, unfortunately, like that bearish liquidity comes through, LDPMs actually point pretty distinctly upwards, and then as soon as the bearish comes through, unfortunately, it tests that support right there at LDPM L7, maintains its bearish outlook, and then immediately moves to test the support at LDPM L6. So at this point, things are looking obviously bearish. We test that support once more, and we've actually gotten bearisher. So we can see that the redness has gone redder, which you can set the colors as you want with LDPS. But here I have it where the more red, the more bearish, the more the conditions don't look bullish. I don't know how many other ways I can say that. So, and then we break through distinctly this LDPM L6 support. Keep going, we're bearish, we're bearish, we're bearish. We keep going down, we're bearish, we're bearish. Oh, and that's where we are today. Okay. So, pretty bearish on Ethereum, which we broke through the support. We're still maintaining this bearish liquidity. We do have these resistances coming up, so it'll be interesting to watch how liquidity changes as those resistances come into view. But just as we saw not too long earlier, the expectation is a rejection of, a bounce off of that the resistance, because LDPS is still saying that things are bullish. We really this is the ideal situation right here, right? Where we have that bearish liquidity, and then but as it's appreciating, LDPS goes, oh, okay, and then now we know it's it starts picking up on more robust bullish flows more than just like a bounce off of some organic bid or whatnot. And we don't really have that right here yet. So if we start maybe in the next hour or so, start printing some bullish prints, then maybe, but we could see that it's a slightly different environment when you're going to test a resistance and you get a nice switch of bullish liquidity, on the way to that resistance than when you test it uh, with just straight bearish liquidity. So, all right, that's Ethereum. So Ethereum's actually pretty, not the strongest looking right now. You know, but so let's check out Solana. Solana, Solana. Let's go to do the start of the day again. What do we got? So we start just prior to the start of the day. We test this support, and this is a little bit of like what we said. There's not a lot of distance between that support and resistance, but we see this nice. We test support. We actually a little hairy here, but it looks like we cling to that support. We bounce, and then we see this, single bullish candle comes through. So let's see what happens. It fails, so it gets rejected off LDPM, bearish liquidity. We go to test LDPM again. And as we tested, it looks like we get that bullish liquidity back. So now we're a little bit more confident that we're just going to continue upwards. So which looks like we do. So we're up, up, up. Price is now stagnating though. So now we're like, okay, we're probably going to need to test that support a little bit. But we don't even need to. We just continue upwards. We've seen like kind of like keeps making its way almost, it seems, to that support. But green is the name of the game, so as long as it's green, the name of the game is green. And there we go. So in that sort of oscillating price, we finally get a bearish print. So now we're, it looks like whatever bullish liquidity has been being used to sort of weave the price up is now gone. So now we're definitely going to test the support, which we do. Looks like we do a pretty good job of testing it and bouncing, and then we move ultimately through. Like the ideal would have been that as it bounced up, we maybe start getting some more bullish prints. The candle started printing green, and then we know, okay, we're gonna still kind of be ushering ourselves upwards. But as it tests, it maintained its bearish prints, bounced a little bit, and then immediately as it tested it again, just moved all the way through. We got that bearish liquidity though. So we have an aggressive ask, and then it's pushing all the transactionary pressure in a sense down to the bid. So we essentially have someone or some entity or some force. There was a collection of behavior that is crossing from the ask up top down to the bid, and it's kind of pushing the bid down. It's flowing to the bid. So the expectation is that things should go down. So we hit the resistance. We keep going. We hit the resistance again. We have an eager ask flow into the bid. Oh, and that's where we are now. Okay. So this is still a pretty bearish print. Like as long as we have that aggressive ask sort of coming, showing up. We do now, instead of flowing to the bid though, we are flowing to the ask. So it looks like there is a little bit of an eager bid, kind of cushioning the order book from the ask getting all the way down to that organic bid. We have a little bit of instead movement from the bid up to the ask, which is a tentatively bullish thing, but LDPS is not convinced that it's changed conditions wholly, so candles are still red. We've bounced, been rejected in the vicinity of these resistances twice already, and so until these candles change to a definitive bullish state, the expected outcome will continue to be repeated rejections off of that resistance and movement ultimately down to the support, which is currently at 208. LDPM L6, 208. So it's a tentatively bearish showing. So again, to cap on the daily on NVIDIA, I still have that bearish outlook, right? Like I think liquidity still is going to demand a support, and it looks like here LDPM L5 at 160. Bitcoin is bearish. We do have a little bit of that bullish precedence via the liquidity, so this support might hold for a minute, but as things continue to drain, it looks ever more likely that the price is going to move down into past that support, and then ultimately, if those bearish conditions continue, to LDPM L7. which is 110,000. ES futures, we see that stagnating price. We do have bullish liquidity, but we might need to test support before another leg up. And then while we're testing support, just as we've kind of seen as this repeating pattern, we just kind of want to keep an eye out for the how liquidity starts getting and behaving as the support comes by. Do we start seeing these bearish prints start to pop through, or is it just like a really nice bullish bounce right up, right? Or do we bullish bounce and then we start seeing some bearish flows start coming through? On Ethereum, we see again that it was bearish. We've moved past the support. We maintain this this bearish red outlook. And on Solana, we see a similar thing with support located around $208 at LDPML6. So yeah, so it looks like overall in the markets, a pretty soft bearish leaning. The At least in the even in the near term on the futures, might expect a little bit of a bounce off that support. If conditions remain, then can expect a spot bounce with a kind of a renewal of that bullish liquidity. But if we take crypto to be a little bit of a beta or a front runner in the markets, it looks like conditions are actually kind of sliding towards definitively bearish. Actually, let's look at Bitcoin on the daily. I think we've done that. Ooh. So we're definitely, the first thing I noticed is that we've been draining this liquidity. This bullish liquidity has been being drained out of Bitcoin. And we're bearish testing the support here at LDPML7 at 107,878. So that's not the most bullish thing, right? Like we have been repeatedly testing these supports, and every time we see that it kind of causes a massive reduction in the available bullish liquidity, right? The reserves of oomph behind the spot bounces are diminishing. And so now we are in a situation where we are kind of persistently bearish. We've been printing several bearish prints, and we kind of see them, they've been piling up. The liquidity precedence, the liquidity amount is becoming near zero, so less bullish. And amount is already near zero, which low liquidity, high volatility, so perhaps some volatile times ahead. But this testing the support with this bearish liquidity does infer downside, which so we fell through support once in a similar fashion here, and that was a 16% drop, which isn't terrible. I mean, for Bitcoin, right? I want to see when it falls through the big boy, but I guess it's only recent. Big boy being out at PML7, but yeah, that's where we are now. So Bitcoin on the daily is also looking pretty bearish. So Bitcoin on the 15 is looking tentatively bearish. Bitcoin all the way up on the daily is looking bearish. Nvidia on the daily is looking bearish. ES futures on the 15 is looking technically bullish, but don't be surprised if we test that support down there at LDPML7. Ethereum on the 15 looks bearish, and the Solana still looks bearish. So lots of bearish prints about. Not the cleanest prints in either direction, but as long as the liquidity remains bearish per LDPS, yeah, sorry. That is simply the outlook that we have to maintain. But like I said, definitely we're going to be keeping an eye out for as these resistances and these supports approach, to see if they can sort of inject any kind of bullish flow or bullish liquidity into this current situation. So, so Solana definitely has bearish liquidity amounts. So the overall behavior lately has been bearish, and flow rate is actually kind of becoming more bearish. So perhaps another rapid rejection off of this LDPM L5 resistance at 214. So have to keep an eye out. So, well, there you go with that. Some reaching down. We'll see how effective. But okay, that is about it for today. I hope this has been helpful. I've been actually enjoying these. And I think that a huge part of sort of working and starting with LDPM and LDPS is sort of just watching it over and over and over again. I think it strips away a lot of the uniqueness in a sense, like the strangeness that comes with the uniqueness, and you really do start seeing the same patterns reemerge and reemerge and reemerge. And so, whereas I think the first few times you might hear me talking about it, it does seem like you got to keep an eye out for all these different things and these different conditions. But I think as you stick with it, you'll see that it really is just kind of like the same behavior just repeated. This is the same behavior that we saw on last week on the last Friday, and then on Sunday with the video, right? So we have this bullish kick through, stagnating price, the LDPMs, the supports are rising to meet the spot. So now the name of the game is just let's monitor liquidity conditions as those two meet, and if it's bullish, we should expect a bounce, and if it starts painting bearish prints, then we need to expect something that we, more along the lines of what we saw here. So, okay guys, that'll be it for today. Thanks for joining, and again, if you like this stuff, let me know. I've already received some feedback, and it looks like you guys do like this stuff, so I'm going to keep doing it. If you want anything switched up, if you want anything else talked about, I kind of just pick tickers. I go to the heat map, really, and I just see what's moved a lot. And then I kind of just pick from there. Oh, look, a bullish print. So definitely going to test that resistance then at LDPM L5, and we'll keep an eye out for that. That's exciting, and that's the name of the game, right? So like if we went short here when things went bearish, either exited as it bounced off that support, or slowly exit, downsized position as spot rose despite the bearish liquidity. But now with that bullish print, probably X out and then just wait for the behavior, the relationship between this resistance and the candle to resolve. Maybe it's only the 15-minute, and then go from there. So, but okay, yeah. If you guys like this stuff, let me know. If you don't like it, don't let me know. And then if you want anything else done, anything else talked about, if you want more formal stuff about LDPM and LDPS, let me know, and I will try to do it. So, all right, guys. Thanks for joining. Thanks for having me, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.